Budget Committee. And I'm going to, at this point in time, open the
Want to
public
start first?
hearing.
Want me to start? We didn't say lights, camera, action.
Is it ready?
It is now.
Okay. All right, we're ready. We're lights, camera, action now. Okay. Opening the January 31st, 2018 Tilton Budget Committee meeting. And I'm going to open the public hearing. And I want to welcome the public who's here tonight and see if anybody has any comments or questions. Scott?
I have some questions on the budget.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Oh, we're ready.
I guess I'll start out with, right off the bat. Back in the 2015 town meeting that we had, that's our business meeting that we have in March. It was brought up to the selectmen at that time about not expanding the town government in between our town meetings, to indebt the townspeople for something that we don't have a vote on until such time we come to town meeting. And I noticed this year, last year, they said they heard us loud and clear, the chairman of the select board that day. You go back and watch the tape, which I went back and watched the tape from the town meeting. She said, we hear you loud and clear. The following year, when they wanted to bring an assistant into the town planner, Gary, they waited until it came to the town meeting and made their presentation to the townspeople, at which we had the debate on it, and then it was voted in. This year, in midstream, they went ahead and they expanded the dispatch to a full-time dispatch here, two full-time employees, I should say. It's not a full-time dispatch because they're doing 16 hours. But they did just the opposite of what they told us they were going to do, the select board. They said they would wait until they came to town meeting so we could have the discussion at town meetings. Instead, they midstream, middle of the year, what was in November, but it's still, on the year before, they went ahead and expanded the dispatch without having the townspeople have a say, so they've indebted us on that. Now, we're the bad ones if we come to town meeting and say we don't want to do it. And I think it's wrong. I think that, we made our statement there, they said they heard us, and a lot of the same selectmen still sat on the board that was on in 2015, sat on this board. It's a lot of people on the budget committee that were there. I didn't hear any discussion from the budget committee saying, hey, hold on a second. This was what you had promised the people at our 2015 town meeting, that you would wait. I think it's wrong, and I think it's shameful, because we asked them to wait and bring it to town meeting. Whether we like it or not, I think that we have one business meeting a year as townspeople for our tax dollars. And that's when, if we're going to expand the services that we're providing in town, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, the time to do it is to come through the budget process, bring it to the budget hearing, that's why we're under budget law here, RSA, and have the budget committee debate it, and then have the townspeople debate it at our town meeting before it's implemented. I don't think it's fair to the townspeople now. We've got something already started, a dispatch already started, and here it is, an increase. And when I look back on it, I think that's something that bothers me, and I'm going to ask this question. It looks like they've taken a patrol officer off the patrol in order to offset some of the costs on the two full-time dispatchers. I went back in the history of the town back to '93 to see where we've been with patrol officers. And we've increased the management staff, for the top part of the staff of the PD, heavily since 1993. But we're going to be 2 more patrol officers than we were in 1993. It looks like we're only going to have 8. And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm asking you as a question, because I don't have all the answers, but from what I could decipher looking at the information that's on the town website, it looks like we're going to have 8 patrol officers now. Is that correct?
I believe that what happened was that there were some changes, and Chief Cormier, correct me if I'm wrong, there were some changes within the department, so no more officers were added. Is that correct? the same number, but they have different positions now?
We shifted some of their assignments and duties, was one of the changes we made.
And that's, isn't that,
Yeah, and then obviously, and we had one leave, you know, that his whole family moved back to
But
Arizona.
we've eliminated, from looking at the numbers here,
Mhm.
it says that there was a reduction of 1 patrol officer. Is that correct? Because that's what it's saying, it's offset by patrol officer.
Yes.
Yeah, we did have one go to Arizona.
So, but we didn't replace them, is my point.
correct?
We didn't.
Okay, so we've got 1 less patrol officer in 2018 than when we started with in 2017.
That's correct.
Right.
But aren't the sergeants or something like that now on the road too?
The corporals, yeah.
Yeah, so there's more on the road than just because they're getting additional duties.
Well, we had corporals before too. I'm
Yeah,
talking
not
about
on the-
patrol.
on
But they're
patrol.
now
They're on patrol.
patrolling as
Yeah.
well as fulfilling the other duties.
Okay.
So that's where the shift was.
But what I'm saying is, I think the point I'm trying to make is, I think as a citizen, we were told something at our town meeting by our governing body, our elected officials, that they heard us loud and clear and they were willing to wait. They did the right thing with Darius' assistant. So they understood what we were talking about. There's no question about that, because you go back and watch the selectmen's meeting when they were talking about bringing the assistant on for Dari. And that was the whole thing, and you even said it, Jane, at the meeting, that this is what the people have asked for, right?
Yes, that's
And
correct.
then this year, we went ahead and expanded the dispatch without any thought or any talk from this body, from the budget committee, or from the select board,
Well, we
about
were,
what was promised at 2015 town meeting to the townspeople.
there
It's
was,
the only business meeting we have, Jim.
I know that, there was considerable debate about the dispatch. And
Oh,
it was,
that
and the
could be,
decision
but-
was made, I believe, because at that moment in time, there was a safety issue. Again, correct me, Selectman and Chief Cormier, if I'm incorrect.
This is a discussion on the budget, not the selectmen's actions.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just
So,
saying,
It's
that,
not, you know.
But it was a
if you want
safety
selectmen's
issue,
response, it's
was-
gonna have to come from a selectmen's meeting.
It was a safety issue. That's why the dispatch was added. And it was also, the way it was explained to us by Chief Cormier and by the finance director, who was also involved in the explanation of it, it was that in the long run, it will save money because of the paperwork that has to be done.
I'm just saying, on the surface, Chair, it does not smell right.
Okay.
I think we were told something, and whether I have to go to the Board of Selectmen and bring it in front of them, because if they're the body, but they were the ones with the Budget Committee sitting there. It is the budget for the Budget Committee, that's why I'm
Correct.
bringing it to you tonight. But you were sitting there just like they were sitting at the town meeting, and they spoke loud and clear. The people were very upset with what had taken place, and they said, "We hear you loud and clear. You can watch the tape just as I did. It's right there." And so
No, I'm aware of it, Scott. I was
Okay.
there and I heard it, and I think all but one member of this budget committee did.
And I just think that what we were told and then it didn't happen, I think is unfair to the townspeople. That's my point. And I'm not pointing fingers at the budget committee. I'm just saying, trust is a big thing when you're dealing with other people's money. Okay, I'll continue on. Something that's always, and I've been one that's attended the budget hearings for, probably the only one for a lot of years. I was the only one that sat here in front of the budget committee, but something that's always bugged me, the way the budget's put together, is when this town pays off a large debt, like we did with 61 Business Park Drive, and it just gets sucked in and incorporated, and it doesn't get shown that, I think our debt, in our budget, I think our debt that we carry for the town should be separate lines by themselves. Meaning it shouldn't be in part of the finance. And then it just shows, I look here, we paid off, if my numbers are correct, we paid off like $145,000 or something is the payment that we were paying. You'll hold on. $143,500, it looks like what the debt used to be for the 61 Business Park Drive, including principal and interest. Is that correct, Tim?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, and it bothers me the fact that we show a decrease, and then, but we don't ever, our debt load is something separate that we carry. And why I say that is if we have a warrant article that comes forward in the future for a large expenditure in town, it's always brought forth by a special warrant article by itself because it's a specific purpose. And I think we should keep our debt separate of, I hear on finances and I see that, you know, that there's a lot of different things that make up the finance department. But I think our debt, as far as our long-term borrowing debt, what we carry, should be separate so that we have, as a body, we know when we pay something on and you see it, instead of it just being just buried in the number. And that's where it looks like here, it's just buried within the number. I will ask the question of why our short-term borrowing is increasing. Why is our TAN, our tax anticipation note, why are we increasing that? What's happened that's making that happen?
Usually me to answer. But first of all, the rates are increasing for us, borrowing rates, short-term borrowing rates. And we haven't got a final rate yet for 2018, but the 10-year, which is what most of these rates are based off of, has been going up quite a bit as compared to prior years. And also, we're anticipating that we're going to have to borrow more money because of a couple of reasons. First, the timing and cash flow. And we utilize a line of credit, so we borrow and pay it back and borrow and pay it back. So, you know, during the year to save on interest payments, whereas most towns, a TAN is a lump sum at the beginning of the year and they pay it back at the end of the year. So we try to minimize the interest payments, but with the fact that we brought down the tax rate in prior years, the last time we did that in 16, it really impacted our cash in 17 because the first tax bill is based off of the 16 rate. So so that really pushed us to the limit, and we went right up to borrowing $1.9 million twice during the year with a limit of $2 million. So because of that, we're increasing the amount that we're borrowing for 2018 and anticipating a slightly higher rate.
And what's the reason, Tim, that sorry, Chair, I should go through you. What's the reason that we have to increase is it that we're not, tax payments are not coming in on a regular basis? Or the revenue side, on the revenue side, is that the reason?
I think there's some areas where it isn't, and some things have to be front-end loaded and others not. And so they come in at various times, and the funds aren't available when the bills become due. And I believe that's why they've had to do that.
How do we make our payments, Chair, to both the Winnisquam Regional School District and also the Tilton Northfield Fire District?
Yes,
those are made monthly, and we work very closely with both to try to, in fact, there are many times when I've called and rearranged the schedule for the school payments, and that's something that we do kind of in advance of the year based on cash projections. And then with the fire district, they have been in a position where we've been able to we normally pay on the 15th of the month is what we're supposed to pay on, and at times they've been able to let us go another 10 days, sometimes a month, depending upon their situation. And that's always done in conjunction with their treasurer, Roland, to see that that they're helping us to manage our cash as well. We also work payment terms on all our other vendors, but this is really a factor of the increased budget for a particular year was still, having the first tax bill still based on a prior year in which it was I want to say artificially brought down by fund balance, but, it was reduced by fund balance.
Madam Chair, what is our fund balance?
I knew you were going to ask that. Hang on.
What? Hmm? Okay.
You give me 1 minute, I will tell you.
That's what it sounds to be. My hands are- Where's that page?
1 second.
Second page?
Yep, I'm pulling it up. Hold on.
Won't be on there.
I thought it was on here, wasn't it?
No, it's not in that document.
No.
I thought you attached a sheet for the last,
That's a projection of tax rate that I've provided during the budget season. Hang on 1 second. Let's see. I don't want to misspeak. If you'd like to go on, I will chime in as soon
All right,
as I
I'll go
pull it
on.
up here. It's down. Yeah, that's what I'm pulling up.
he's gonna figure, I thought I had the sheets with me, but I don't.
Can you explain to me what the senior executive committee is?
Those are the 5 people who manage the works of the senior center.
That's what that is? I didn't know, I saw that there, and I noticed before there was no expense on that line. So that's something that was established just in the last couple of years?
Yes.
Last year
Well,
or?
when the senior center opened, it was established, but they weren't considered as a part of a volunteer staff, and they received no stipends. Last year, we voted to give stipends to that group as well.
Okay, so it's just last year when that started?
Yes.
Okay.
I can tell you what the fund balance is.
Yeah.
Okay.
As of the end of our last audit, it was $442,495. $442,495.
All right, thank you, Tim. A concern I have looking over this budget, and I guess I'd like you to explain to me. Under the highway line, 01824319 winter salt and sand, we expended, unaudited, $51,800. And yet, we're only putting $35,000 in that line. Can you explain the rationale of that? I'm sure that it's not gonna go down.
You mean, why was that so little put aside and we?
Why was, number one, what was?
Because they
why
were
was-
basing it, from my understanding, they were basing it on, I'm sorry.
Just one, I have 2 questions. Number one, why did we expend so much?
Okay.
And number 2, why didn't, if there was a rational explanation of why we expended so much, why was the line not increased for this year? That's the second question I have.
You want to?
Yeah, sure, Scott. As we all remember, last year we got really nailed an abnormal amount of ice and snow at the end of the year, January, February, March of 2017. And we also got nailed at the end of 2017, which we don't normally do. We got some early storms where a lot of salt and sand were used up. So that was an anomaly. So we could budget the amount, or the Public Works could budget, the selectmen, based on an average, or we could budget it based on an anomaly. So we averaged out over all the years how much salt and sand we use and budgeted for that amount.
So that's
we-
an average of the last, what, 10 years or so?
Yeah,
I don't
I
think
don't
it
know
was that
how many
many.
years they went back.
I don't think they went back
Three
that
years?
far, Scott.
Yeah.
I think it was
So,
more.
the,
Four.
and the idea is that we may, depending on how this winter goes, we may have to amend that on the floor at town meeting to get a more accurate amount.
Yeah,
It's
because
been a
we
really
had 2
crazy
ice
year.
storms just this month,
Yeah,
last month.
This year has been the ice year, the year of the ice, and it's going right into January and February, so that may have to be amended. We're hoping that we can just go with what we normally spend with a little bit of safety on it.
And what's the same, John, or Madam Chair, what's the same with the next line, the road materials? We expended $12,336, which is over, we went over the line by, looks like 7%. And yet we brought the line even funded at 11,000. Are we not, is that line, is my understanding, is that what we use for materials to like fix roadways or potholes and stuff like that?
And I think there were some sides of the road that were repaired and hadn't been done for a long time. So to catch up with what hadn't been done and to prevent it from building up another year, it was done this year, and that caused the use of the funds. I think there's a couple of the roads I rode, and it was amazing to see the difference after they had done the maintenance that should have been done for the last 4 or 5 years that was not done. And they were trying to break that up to speed now. And I think with the salt and sand, it's going to be hard to say. We're hoping that it was an anomaly, but it could be with all the changes, the climate changes that are taking place, that it might be a trend in the future, and that's when it probably will have to be adjusted.
Well, if I may comment on that too, the Public Works Director and I have been meeting weekly looking at salt and sand use this year, while we've been doing it prior to that, but we're on track right now, and it looks as though we're, provided everything is going to be normal between now and town meeting, that we'll be on track for this year, and that the amount of the budget is sufficient for this year. So, of course, you never know what's coming, but from what we've seen in January, we're on track.
Another line is your street lighting. You overexpended that line, but yet we didn't increase it. That's not going to change, is it? Are we taking street lights? I mean, I know a lot of times I walk early in the morning, there's a lot of street lights, and I've explained, or I've complained to some of the selectmen about it in the past, that it seems if we're paying for these street lights, they ought to be working. We have a lot of times, a lot of street lights that are out for a long period of time. We had some right up here going towards Tilton School for a long time that were out. And so I noticed we expended $36,045, and we had in the budget, it looks like we had 34,000, and this year we only got 32.5. How do you expect that line to go down if they're going to be charging us the same per street light?
Well, probably because it went up. Oh,
Well, I can tell you that we're now part of a consortium. So the Lakes Region Planning Commission put together a group of school districts and towns, and it's based on the rate that we're anticipating we're going to save for street lighting.
So the rate's going down in 2018.
Correct.
Another question I had, Madam Chair. Lakes Region Planning. Years ago, we put $10,000 into a warrant article to hire Lakes Region Planning impact fees and a master plan. here we are paying them $3,540 a year. Have we ever completed the master plan along with the impact fees? Because this has been going on for over a decade.
They came in with the impact fees, and at that point, we had run up, I believe, a bill of around, and I don't know the exact figure, around $5,000. And we had gone to the police department, we had gone to the highway department, looking for areas where we could use impact fees. And no one, the only person who came back with anything, the only department, was the police department. The fire couldn't participate in it, so that was out. The highway had nothing, and the police department had some communication needs. So we were going to go along that route. In the meantime, the state legislature changed the law, and when they changed the law, it was no longer appropriate to reimburse the police department for the communications needs. So Lakes Region Planning came to us and said, you've already spent this much money, and there's nothing we can do because of the change in the state law. So that's why nothing was done with the impact fees. With the master plan, we're talking about renegotiating with them again to do that. Pick that up.
So where did that $10,000 just got spent for nothing? Is
Well,
that
we
what you're
didn't, I don't, I believe the $5,000 was spent.
No, 10,000 is what we appropriated.
And the other 5,000, I don't know what happened to that. Do you know, Tim? I thought that we
No
only,
idea.
that we,
No, we had a warrant article.
yeah, but I don't,
10
I
years
thought
ago.
that it was on for impact fees. I didn't realize the master plan was a part of that. I
No.
thought it was for the impact fees.
It was to pay the Lakes Region Planning Commission to put the impact fees and finish the master plan, okay? And it was a specific purpose because it was a dedicated warrant article. And I'm just asking you, if we had $10,000 in the warrant article, where did it get expended? You're saying 5,000, but where's the other
5,000 was definitely expended with Lakes Region Planning. And the other 5, it was staying in the land use, but I don't know whether it's still there or not.
I mean, we can go back and pull the warrant article to show when we passed that at town meeting.
What year was that?
I want to say it had to have been 2008.
So Sandy.
It was when
2007
Sandy,
or
it was
8.
when Sandy Plesner was still here.
And me.
Yeah.
The documents were done by the Lakes Region Planning Commission. There's certain things that the town has to do in order to implement the master plan. The impact fees are very narrowly defined. It's not, it has to be used for very specific purposes relating to the developments or whatever the impact is. Yeah, if you're not building a new road into this subdivision, you can't charge them for a new road. And even though it's gonna take the police department, they're gonna have to now spend more time there, more resources there, you can't, that's not something that the law quantifies.
So it wasn't as it was presented then, Joe?
It wasn't the panacea that the impact fees were supposed to be, because I sat on that and it's like, well, it's like, this is a lot of work for really very little bang for the buck. But we did get the stuff from Lakes Region Planning Commission.
And they met with us several times. You see, one of the problems is that in Tilton, most of our roads are state roads. If there was a new area, for instance, one of the ones that we looked at was Country Meadows up on School Street. And if that turned into a development, and it has changed since the old days have passed, then we were saying, well, we could get some money for that. But we couldn't because it spills into a state road. So there was really nothing that we could get there. And so Lakes Region did come back, but as I said, Scott, I thought it was $5,000 we were allocated. I didn't
No,
really
it was
think
10,000, it was a warrant article for 10,000. I either was sitting on the budget committee at that time, or it was
And you were.
right before. Yeah,
Choice.
and it was $10,000 warrant article. And Sandy Plesner was the one that presented it to us,
Yeah.
to ask us to support it.
If you talk with Dory, he might have the stuff in land use as part of the planning process.
Okay. I've asked that question a lot of times, and it never,
He'd
I
be
never
the guy
got it.
that would know where it was.
I never got an answer. No, but I mean, I've asked it at budget,
Yeah.
at the budget hearing every year, just to see where we're at. A question that I'll ask on the revenue side. Are we gonna have an increase in our sewer rates? I noticed the revenue they've gone from 462,907 to 508, 533, that's almost a 10% increase.
I think they have a project to,
But that's revenue. Just asking where that number came from.
sewer commissioner?
That would be for the sewer commission to answer. It's a pass.
We have two
Yeah, but it should have been explained to you, the budget committee should have.
I missed that meeting. I was out at a couple, but I don't know.
Peter? Can you address that?
Joanna?
That increase is due to the West Main Street project that we're doing preliminary engineering on in the past. Preliminary engineering would have been covered under the project by USRDA funds, but they've changed their laws. So we're taking that amount out of our reserve fund to do the preliminary engineering. The project will be brought to town meeting in 2019. But the short answer is no, sewer rates will not be going up. It's a one-time expense, and the budget should go down again next year.
What is in our reserve account, madam, on the sewer?
Johanna?
Approximately 750,000 right now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, park commission expense. It seems like the highway department's doing more work on the parks commission, as far as mowing and stuff. I see them, it seems like they're with the mowers a lot more. Is that reflected in the parks commission? I know before, the parks commission used to be the mowing contracts and stuff.
We've gone around and around as to how we could handle that best. We had hoped to be able to turn over a lot of that expense to the highway department. So this year, they started out helping at various places. And I believe they found that it's going to be cheaper in the long run to contract those services out as opposed to using the highway department.
Do
So-
we have, okay, a follow-up to that. Do we have more people on the highway than we've had in the past?
Yes, we do.
So why do we have extra personnel, but we're not taking on extra responsibilities, I guess I'd ask as a taxpayer, from the highway department's perspective?
Well, I think that they've done things, for instance, we talked about the roads and the
Yeah.
amount of money spent on that. They endeavored to do things that hadn't been done for a number of years. They've also taken up doing a lot more repair of sidewalks. And I believe that's why they added to the force. They have a mechanic now who
They've always
does,
had a mechanic.
but he didn't do everything. The mechanic they have now does the highway and all the police cars, does inspections, has a license to do the inspections and sticker those. So he took on some more responsibilities. And I believe they only added one person.
It
And
looks
they,
like there's one more full-time,
yeah.
looking through the numbers.
And I think they're looking to add another one, isn't that not correct?
Yes.
On the administration side, it says here, but I don't know if it's a typo or what, but on the merit raise pool, there's nothing in 2017, but then there's a footnote that there's a 6102 over the side on the merit raises.
Yeah.
How does the budget balance in 2017 if that was not included in the line?
I can explain that. Madam
I'm,
Chair.
just, where is that you see, Scott?
It's on the page 2 of your budget.
Yeah, I have
1,
that.
2, 3, 4, 5. Seventh line down, merit raise pool. If you
Okay,
look
I see it,
on-
I see it, okay.
shows In
Okay.
2017, 0.
Mhm.
And then it shows, there's a footnote over here, original 2017 merit 6102. My question is, if it's 0 in a line, you can't put money in a line on budget law. If a line's zeroed out at town meeting, or if a line shown that's at 0, you can't add money into a line that's zeroed out.
Madam Chair,
Mhm.
I can explain this.
Mhm.
So there was money in the original budget for 2017, which is what that $6,102 shows. But when the merits are distributed, the budget is actually transferred by the selectmen into the different lines, so that the salary lines then aren't overexpended with the merit increase. So that's done in each of the 3 departments, or 3 locations, so one in administration, one in public works, and one in the police department for the non-collective bargaining agreement members. So if you see money left over there, that shows that not all the money in the merit line was allocated to the other budget lines.
So this was, all of it was allocated out there.
In that particular line, yes.
And that's the way it's been every year, Tim, in the
Yes.
last 4 years?
Yep. Yeah, so otherwise, if that weren't done, you would see all the salary lines would be overspent during the year, at the end of the year.
But why does it show as 0 for the,
Because the budget was transferred from that line into other lines.
okay,
And that's why the note exists, to show that the original
All right.
budget, what the original budget was.
So there wasn't actually 0 at
Right.
the time?
That's
when
correct.
the budget was presented at town meeting?
That's right. It was just that that amount of money was transferred into the various salary lines of the people that receive the merit.
Can you, one line that's jumped substantially here, underneath the information technology, the hardware, what is that? It says CD surveillance system. What is that?
cameras,
Cameras?
cameras. The upgraded cameras.
How many cameras?
Yeah, so the system that we had in there for the last 10 years was a kind of a plug-and-play system that we bought, I mean, cheap, that was BJ. Over the years, the cameras have started to break down, the system started to break down, because it was a home system, we had nothing at the time, Scott. So we basically got a quote from Mango to do it, and then we made it so that we could get matching funds through EMPG grants, because the department is also the EOC. And so with the EMPG grant, they'll pay half of what we expend on the system. But we really tried to do a system that would last, and also make sure that we had sound in the rooms we need, like booking, the interview room, the lobby, make sure the exterior sidewalks were videoed in case there was a domestic here or something like that. So we did add a couple, and Tim, you could expand on that.
Yeah, the 9,000 reflects half of the total amount. So we're anticipating that, and we had applied for this grant last year, but the matching funds that we had didn't qualify. They were thought to qualify, but in the end they didn't qualify. But we were told that this type of expenditure would qualify, providing the same specifications in the grant, are the same, in 2018 as they were in prior years, which can change, but we're anticipating that once we expend this money, we'll apply for that second portion. We'll be able to build out the entire system over there, including additional cameras for the perimeter, for Salmon Run across the street, which would capture that, as well as the intersection of, where they pull out. And the most critical portion of the system is, as the chief said, it's the audio rooms. These are the highest liability areas for the town because these are all areas where they're dealing with a suspect or someone that's been apprehended. So in the booking area, the cell, the interview room, the lobby, and then in the evidence room where we have additional responsibilities of, surveilling it. And so the initial amount of money is not only for the cameras, the audio cameras, but also for the main system itself that will run the whole thing, as well as cabling and installation.
But initially, you're putting in half the system?
That's correct.
Because this is only half the amount, the $10,000 or $9,979 is for just half.
That's correct.
So if it's a,
But
I'll go back to this then.
it's a 100% match. So we spend $9,000, we qualify for $9,000.
Madam Chair,
Sorry.
I'll ask this question, as you presented it to me. You said that to bring the dispatch on us, there was a safety issue.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't, if it's a high-risk area, why are we cutting a $5 million budget by $10,000 because we have a safety issue, and we're only going to put in half of the system that's supposedly needed for the surveillance within PD?
The
Can you answer that question?
The safety issue for the dispatch
Yeah.
was because of the officers on the road
Yeah.
who were detained on the road, not in the police
But
office.
you're telling me it's not a safety issue if you want to have surveillance of people that are in the station or outside the station that have just been arrested? We were just presented with that it's a safety issue. There's a high-risk area with the booking area and with the interview area, and yet it's only a $10,000 expenditure, and yet we're cutting it in half and only providing half of what's actually needed for the system within the building. That makes no sense to me. It seems like we're trying to save a penny for a dollar.
Are we cutting it in half? I think
Isn't
we're
it-
just
isn't
matching
it
it.
that
We're
we are-
paying half and the grant's paying it.
Yeah.
No.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
In other words, it's a 100% match. We spend the $99.79 and we'll qualify for $99.79.
But what if the grant doesn't come through? It didn't come through last year.
Correct.
That's what you just got done
Correct.
telling me.
And
Is the
when
grant
I
did not come through. So if the grant doesn't come through, we don't have the money in the budget to do the full system. That's my point. My point is that we're putting a budget together for the town's operation. I don't want to give the town any more money than I have to out of my pocket. But one thing I do want to do is I want to make sure that we have what we need in town, and it's not contingent on whether we're going to get grant money or not. Because the last thing you want to do is run out and get a system, and you only buy half of it, and then in another year you go back, and like any electronics, this might be obsolete what you bought the year before to try to buy something that's going to match up to it. And that's my point as a taxpayer. I think we're looking at it. He just said that the year before we did not get the grant.
Well,
Right.
we actually were very successful with EMPG grants this last year, but that portion of it, we had to remove that portion. But we were able to get a highway trailer, a message board trailer. We were able to get an MDT for one of the cruisers at about $6,300. And we were, the highway message board was $15,000. We got a generator for $8,200 and a new radio console for $5,300. So those things were all 100% grant paid for. And because we had matching monies of other expenditures that we were able to use to match it. But when it came time for the qualifying items to match for surveillance equipment, it was close, but it wasn't close enough. So, but it appears as though, providing the grant is still in existence, when FEMA is funding it the way it was being funded in the past, The program coordinator expressed that it should qualify as long as everything else is the same. So then these are the highest risk items.
Yeah.
So that's why, we started with that, and that was my recommendation to the selectmen and the budget committee, so that we could, manage that as best as possible, dollar-wise.
Madam Chair.
Okay. I have a little more information on that. The system that they're going to be getting previously was an analog system, so everything was on RCA cables and done like that. Old technology, and plus it burns out. The new stuff is all going to be all on Cat 6. It's all digital. And included with that is the complete recording system for it. So what that will do with that money is get everything wired. It will get the receiver, and the recorder and all that, and the hard drives and everything for it, and the cameras and the microphones set up in all the very crucial spots where interactions would happen with people they detain or outside. The other locations are not as critical, but they're still critical, but we'll have the infrastructure all done so that the rest will be there. And if we can't get the grant, which I'm pretty confident, but there's no such thing as a sure thing. Possibly next year could come back to get some more money to finish it off, but it's a system that will have all of the foundation for.
Madam
That makes
Chair,
sense.
with the federal government, $21 trillion in the hole, you're not guaranteed anything, what you're gonna get. And second, if, with the state of the country sue happy, and when you bring a prisoner or you bring somebody into the police station, I think that as a taxpayer, we've paid lawsuits out in this town that I'm not happy for over the years. But as a taxpayer, if we can expend $10,000 into a line, so we're not at risk of whether we're going to get a grant or whether we're not. If we get the grant, it can go to the unreserved fund balance. It can still be matched. But my point is, if we could put $10,000 in the line to make sure we have the equipment to, whether it's inside or outside, I'd like to see the whole thing done at one time. So therefore, if there is an episode, it is recorded. It's not like happened down to the park where someone did vandalism and the cameras couldn't pick it up. I mean, we had vandalism down there, the cameras never picked it up because the cameras weren't in the right spots or didn't cover the right area. They never caught the people that did the vandalism down there the first time. They had a long discussion, the Board of Selectmen. So my point is, the PD is a place where they deal with all kinds of individuals. And I would say as a taxpayer, to put $10,000 in a budget, the small percentage is $5 million, and I'm one that criticizes the budget as much as anyone in town. But I would say that if, and I'm the first one to admit it, but I would say that in this episode, if we can put security in there's people coming all hours of the day. Now we have dispatch staff there for 16 hours a day, right, into the dark at night, probably till midnight, and then they get done, they start again at 8. I would say if we can have the precautions of having cameras outside, cameras inside, and it would prevent from some episode happening that somebody's going to get sued, whether it's a police officer or whether it's an employee of the town. I think it's money well spent. That's my point. And you as the budget committee can control the budget. It's your budget. You bring it to the townspeople. And if you're not willing to speak to it, I will speak to it at town meeting. But I think that it's a right thing to do. I think there's times when you have to spend money to do what's right. And not take the chance that the federal government's going to give you a grant or they're not going to give you a grant. It's great to get the grants, but when you don't get them, if you're not prepared for it, it should not impede what the safety is of the building of the police department.
So noted, Scott.
Thank you.
I want to also tell you, Scott, that Town of Tilton Planning Board in 2009 says the Town of Tilton Master Plan update for 2009. There was a final draft given, apparently, and possibly that's where the $5,000 went.
That's the other.
I'll check on it, yeah, that's the other 5,000. I'll check on that tomorrow with Dory, but we just found this on the Town of Tilton website, okay?
Okay. I guess I've had my time, Madam, thank you.
Anyone else? Would you like to speak?
I can. My name is Ann Nichols. I'm the Director of Development for Public Relations for Lakes Region Mental Health Center, which is formerly known as Genesis Behavioral Health. I just wanted, excuse me, to go on record to thank the Budget Committee and the Select Board for their recommendation for continued support. I appreciate that very much.
Thank you. And I might add, for anyone listening, that we've been pleased to see the progress that we've seen you make in the town of Tilton in the last few years, which is why we agreed to give you some money this year and last year.
I do have one more thing to.
Yes, Scott.
On a personal budget issue, what power do we have as townspeople to get more of a competition on MetroCast than what we have?
I can answer this one. I can answer this one.
He's a consortium
I was on that
expert.
committee and a member of those negotiations, and the answer is none, zero. You can't influence, you can call them up, but they're not compelled to do anything. We have no power, none whatsoever. The Telecommunications Act of 1939, as amended, okay, doesn't give anybody governmentally the power to dictate to them what they'll charge or
But can you bring competition in?
the other half of that is it's only so much room on those poles out there, and you have to have a certain amount of separation. The contract that we have with MetroCast to give them a license to broadcast in the town states that anybody else that comes in here that wants to broadcast in the town has to abide by the same exact set of rules. MetroCast has the infrastructure in place. Comcast or any of those other places would have to spend millions of dollars in order to meet the terms of that particular contract in an industry that, quite frankly, is going to satellites and dishes and the internet and live streaming, and their profits are down, their income is down. MetroCast would love to get right into the internet business and leave TV. That's my own personal take on that, because it doesn't make them any money. So Comcast and those other people aren't going to pay the money. I talked with a Comcast person who laughed at me.
And
It just seems
MetroCast
that
was just
that
bought
bill
out.
keeps going up and up and up,
Yeah,
and there's no
get on
rhyme or
the-
reason.
I was on the MetroCast committee, but I got the dish. No service interruptions, it's cheaper, it's better service. But that's just me.
And I'm sorry, that's not a budget issue, but it is a
A
budget.
personal budget issue.
Madam Chairwoman, I would like to make a motion at this point in time, based upon the public hearing information, that we increase the line item for the cameras for another 9,000. How much was it?
$979.
$9,971. In deference to the grant, if we get the grant, that's okay, we'll use it for something else. Okay?
Or you can use it as an offset, right, Tim?
Well,
You get the grant?
The grant probably wouldn't apply at that point, because the grant is only for something you're going to be doing in conjunction with that. In other words, if we built it at 100%, we won't be able to get money back, it's already done. So these are for items that, that need to be done. It might be that we could find another project pertaining to the Emergency Operations Center. That's a possibility. Chief?
Well, we could use, if we put the money in there, we could use the total amount probably as soft match towards another project related to it.
Towards another project, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But in other words, the way this grant works is you have a project, you provide half the match money, they provide the other half, and then they give you the, the approval to complete it, so.
But when, I guess I'll ask the question, Madam Chair. A question that I'll ask them. If you were to apply for the grant, when would the town get the grant? And how long would it take before the construction of the video equipment was in place?
I don't know. Tim, you will have to answer, because I don't know when the grant ends.
I can tell you, it's a seemingly quick process, but it takes a long time. So we would have to, the chief can tell you, I hate to say it, but it's just so true.
Go back.
So once we complete our half,
Yeah.
we would make our application, and I would say it would probably be at least 4 to 6 months before we would have approval on that. And that would be probably best case.
Madam Chairwoman, I see this as an important project, and my motion still stands.
All right, is there a second to the motion? Motion doesn't pass. I think one thing to note is that if we get the money, if we spend the money, and we have the money, we can't apply for the grant. Is that not correct?
If we complete the project.
Right, we can't get the grant.
That's correct, for that.
Right.
But couldn't you spend half? I guess I'm confused here. I want a little explanation. If you appropriate, say, let's round it off, 10,000 now, and you put another 10,000, so you have 20,000 in that line for those cameras. You build out the 10,000, the 9,979 you've got in your budget. You apply for the grant, right? You still can apply for the grant. You haven't spent the other 9,000. You haven't built the other side out, right? Is that correct, Tim?
Well, that's the only way we can do it.
So you apply for the grant. What my point is, as a budget, as talking about the budget, you have within the money, or the select board can spend every dime we have within the money. They have a right to spend that money. My point is, if it's in there, and you build it out January, you build it out in February, March, whatever, you build it out. The grant's applied for. 4 months later, you find out you're not going to get the grant. You can go ahead and finish the whole project that year. We're not waiting for another budget year.
That's correct.
Okay? The other thing is, if we get the money, if we get the matching money, we get a letter saying, yes, we're going to give you the extra money for the thing, then you can complete the bill. But the way it is, what we're doing right now
We have to wait another
is you're
year.
setting up a budget with half the money, hoping you're going to get the grant, waiting on the grant. If the grant doesn't come in, we as townspeople lose out. If it's a budget process, and then if you get the grant, you have $10,000 in there that the selectmen don't have to spend. It goes in the reserve fund balance to be used, whether to offset taxes in the future or whatever. It's just better budgeting, I think. I think it's smarter budgeting, because you're not hand-tying the needs of the town. If this is a serious need, you're not hand-tying a serious need of the town to whether or not you're getting grant money. Granted, the selectmen could probably find the money in other lines, but they don't know what's going to come up against them in the year. They could have a disaster, like the salt shed down there falling off the side building. You know, anything like that could happen.
The money being appropriated, it does not have to be spent.
That's my point, in the budget process. You
Now,
should be budgeting.
answer me if you will, because you know more about this process. If we appropriate specifically the full amount of the money, that means that we're no longer eligible to apply for the grant. Is that correct?
No, because it is in the IT hardware budget line.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not in that police line. There's nowhere it's in the police line. It's in the,
It's just money that's in that line
It's just
item
money that's in that line item.
that can be expended or not expended at the determination of the select board and finance.
they control the budget once we pass it at town
Right.
meeting.
And that's my reasoning behind it. We've done that before where we put money in just in case. And great, if we don't need it, we can find use for salt and sand down the road with that money. But at least the money is there so that we don't have to go back to the town, say, oops, we're like $10,000 short, folks. What can we do?
When we didn't get the grant the last time, we still spent the money, didn't we? We got it from reserve or somewhere.
No. So the first grant was fully funded for the highway message sign and for the mobile data terminal in the cruiser. So that was 100% paid for by the Emergency Management Performance Grant funds. The second grant that we did had three pieces to it. Two of the pieces met the criteria, were fine. The third, which were the cameras, couldn't move on. So we either had to cancel the whole grant and start over, or modify the grant and just take that piece out, which is what we did, so that the two that did qualify moved on to the next stage, and that was approved.
So, Madam Chairwoman, I restate my motion at this point in time.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
With no discussion?
Oh, we've had the discussion. Is there any more discussion?
These cameras, you talk about the need for cameras is critical. The $9,000 that you propose to put into the budget toward these cameras, they cover the insides of the station and booking and the cell, holding cell and the dispatch area and right in the front or around the front, right? Those are the critical areas that we will indeed get for $9,000.
Yes.
The bulk of where we would have $10,000, the bulk of our outlay. What are the other critical areas? The parking lot across the street, up in the back of the police parking lot? And is that what we're getting with the other $9,000?
Well, this is my project in the IT budget. So, in conjunction with the chief and looking at it and also with our supplier, and in going through the building and where we have areas that we need coverage, we've identified the existing locations that need to be preserved, the expanded locations which will provide complete protection around the building, and also because we're doing things within certain vicinities and we're wiring to those locations, in other words, the parking lot at Salmon Run is potentially a liability for the town, or something that makes a lot of sense to put a camera on across that way on the sign looking out. So there were three components: existing, new, and then future. And there was another camera for another area within evidence, so that would give you even greater coverage back in one of the areas of the evidence storage room. We feel as though the initial coverage is adequate enough, as there's no coverage in there now, and this was one of the new cameras. But ideally, we'd like to have two in there. So one of those is a future. So we went through this whole process in each of the areas, looked at the coverage, looked at how it was going to be used, safety, security, physical security of the building, and as it relates to the Emergency Operations Center. So that was all taken into account.
Yeah, but what are we getting for $10,000?
You're getting all the installation, the wiring. You're getting the main unit, which is the network video recorder, all the storage that goes along with it.
And the cameras that go within the building?
Some of the cameras that go within the building. The ones that are the highest liability areas that have audio and video. And those are also very because they're high definition, they take up a lot of storage space. So the network video recorder has a lot of storage space on it. So it's built
And
out
there's
to the
software that
entire-
goes with that,
Oh,
correct?
absolutely. It's all,
And how much is the ongoing software costs with this system?
there is none.
So there's no licensing or any of that? Every year you have to re-up your agreement or none of that?
No, that's correct. Now, if we make changes, if we add, if we do other things, we could incur some costs, but otherwise, as it exists, no.
Chief, currently, what is the surveillance of the walkways and whatever coming into the PD?
Yeah, we have two outside. So this system that he has quoted it gives basically 360 degrees of coverage.
Right. So at this point in time, you do not have 360-degree coverage. So, and your building's made of wood?
Yeah.
Plastic.
I mean.
Plastic.
Yeah.
So there are areas that if someone was diligent enough to do some damage, there are areas that are not covered at this point in time to PD.
Right. Like the side of the building, the front of the building isn't covered. Like if someone was walking up that sidewalk or in front of the building, there's a domestic or something happens, that's not covered.
So if someone, we open up Salmon Way, the driveway, cars are parked in there at 2 o'clock in the morning when drug deals, we know do occur on occasion. And damage could occur. That would be there's no camera at that point in time to record anything.
No, it would also be if someone drove by the PD and did something to it or any of that. There's nothing, our existing cameras cover the Sally Port up ramp and that side of the building only.
So at this point in time, at midnight, or whenever when the dispatchers leave, that building is unoccupied, other than maybe patrolmen coming in and out off their patrol.
Right.
But it's a minimum staffing. So you really don't have a lot of security and safety at that point in time as your patrolmen are out.
No.
So they're coming into a building that potentially could be dangerous because there are areas that are unviewable at this point in time that could have someone in the police department breaking in. So for the $10,000, not only are you providing security and safety for your dispatchers that are leaving, because that is late at night, I would hope that you're going to make sure they're safe, which may mean an officer having to be there for them to leave, whereas this could be all on camera. We won't even talk about liability at this point in time. So anything happens after midnight, someone could come in and say, I slipped and fell at 12:01 at the police department, and you would have no way to disprove it, correct?
I don't know, right?
Thank you.
All right, John?
Just to make it clear that you gain no safety and you gain no security by installing a camera. You only record what happened. So,
Great news footage.
you get great news footage. So nobody's going to be any safer because it's just recording it. It's just a recording of what happened. But
Then why are we
that's
buying
it. And there's plenty of places in town that we don't have cameras.
Like town hall.
We don't have a lot around town hall, we don't have a lot around public works, we don't have a lot at the island, we don't have them other places too. So starting out with having that in the crucial places where you're going to run into liability problems and also for cases and that, the $10,000 will get all that going. And I'm really confident that that $10,000 will do it. And likewise, I'm confident that if we can't get that grant, there still will be $10,000 somewhere in the selectmen budget, because every year, and I'm the worst person about complaining about this, the 29th of December, you will have $40,000 worth of stuff that gets spent every single year, and that's the way it works. And you know it too, Scott.
Oh, I know.
So the
But I wanna
$10,000,
hear you
putting it
guys
in
say
here,
it.
I shouldn't be the one saying it, but every year, you're gonna have that 10,000. We'll get it done, even if you don't put in here now.
I
But
think
if
that's
you
what
put
I
in
want to
here now-
hear, John. I want to hear the select board. It's not, the
Yeah.
budget committee puts the budget together. It's their budget. but it's the select board that carries out the budget that's passed by the legislative body at town meeting.
And if you
And
put
what
this in,
bothers me is the budget committee, the only strings you control is the budget. And what bothers me is, and that's what I want to hear, you're a select board member, you're on the budget committee, but I want to hear someone from the select board, as Catherine said, this is a select board issue, and it is a select board issue, because it was brought to them before it was brought to the budget committee, and it was explained to them before it was explained to the budget committee. But the townspeople need to hear the select board say, we're not going to put a half of a system in. And you can say it's not a safety issue, but it could pay for itself if there was vandalism to the generator, police cruiser, so on and so forth. If somebody got mugged in the parking lot, it might not prevent the mugging, but it would at least help them in catching the perpetrator. That's my point. And if you're going to have one building in town that someone's going to take anger out, it's going to be at the PD.
yeah, I can guarantee that there'll be sufficient money to complete that system, regardless, and if the $10,000 additional is added in, you're going to end up with something you may not want to spend. That $10,000 might end up
Slush,
being...
we're building
That
in
slush fund.
slush.
That's
Exactly.
absolutely, Joe.
We have a motion on the floor and a second.
And this is discussion, aren't you glad we discussed it?
Yeah.
And I'd like to add something.
Yeah.
Basically, my thoughts exactly, John. When we can get the grant and match half of that, why not? When this was brought to us, I'd like to clarify that what we're getting with the initial 10,000 is better than what we have now. Am I correct?
That's right.
So we're already doing better with that 10,000. So why put 10,000 in as fluff that will ultimately be maybe used against us to buy something else? Or I would prefer.
They to buy a new
way to
police
go.
car, Scott.
I
So
would
the
just,
extra 10,000 gives us
I'm on gas for-
an ideal situation. We're getting the parking lot, we're getting those things. We can't say what if. Like John said, cameras don't prevent crime. They just catch it. And if you're lucky, they look at the camera and you catch it. But that's ideal, that extra 10,000, to provide that safety. But we're getting the critical areas with the initial 10,000. Should we not get it, I'm confident I will advocate for the other 10,000 in the next year.
2 points I'd raise. I disagree, John. I think they do provide safety because someone would monitoring the cameras up to at least midnight. So they can see what's going on outside and rearrange the scheduling at that point in time to make sure it's in a safe position. So they're re-monitoring, I hope. I hope we wouldn't just put cameras up so we could record it. Because I think that gives police extra eyes around a building that is a dangerous building to be in. Secondly is, we've thrown the term safety around very loosely today. And I think we need to tighten up what we mean by what we're looking at, what's a safe environment. With liability issues, I agree. But there are a certain amount of safety issues also. So if we can give police officers, dispatchers, an extra set of eyes in dangerous spots that are black, then more power to them. So that's all I have to say.
They call the question.
Good job, Joe.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Okay.
Let's
Get the
move
vote,
on.
did you get?
I think we got the point across, Madam Chair.
And I think the cameras at the park that were upgraded a few years ago proved the point to the select board that it's very, very important to have good cameras wherever. Because someone brought up the fact there was vandalism some years back. We didn't know what really happened or who did it. We couldn't see.
You couldn't see them.
And now we can see, and that's why we save money when somebody ran through there and knocked everything over and broke statues and everything else. So I think the select board is very well aware of what it will buy. And I have faith that they'll do something with their extra money at the end of the year.
Well, I don't want to give them more money than I have to.
No, I know you don't. Any other questions? Scott?
You opened up a can of worms now.
Oh,
Explain to me what happened at the highway department, and maybe you'll have to have the select board explain, about the purchasing of equipment. The purchasing of equipment and the financing of the purchase without the authority of the legislative body.
Would the select somebody, Tim?
So, there were two options to finance the equipment that the Public Works wanted to exchange and purchase. So there was a trade-in of our former loader, or backhoe rather. There was, then there were some additional monies that could be spent on certain things from the state, which was deemed the SB 38 money, and we had money in our highway equipment fund. So at one point, I talked to the Board of Selectmen about, we could either pay for this through those items or we could finance it. And that was incorrect on my part, as we have done other types of financing through a revolving fund, which is permitted, but not through a capital reserve fund. So I corrected that and went back to the selectmen and explained that we need to use the SB 38 money, some money from the highway equipment fund, and some money in the operating budget. And that's how we ended up paying for it.
Can I have the numbers of what was paid out on all the different funds?
Yeah, I have that. I can get that to you.
So there was money, what I wanted to hear is there was enough slush in the operating budget to carry that purchase.
Did we cut
A
back
portion.
some?
We did cut back, yeah.
Oh, yeah, you cut back, but there was enough, you found enough slush to make up the difference, right?
It was $21,000,
Yeah, well, it's enough slush.
roughly.
Unexpended funds.
No, they didn't go.
I'm taking the slush word away from, I don't
I
like
don't
that
like
word.
that word either.
No, I just
Not
wanted to,
unintended.
I just wanted to have an explanation of what actually took place, because there was not authority to go out and borrow money from the legislative body, which it has to be.
Right, anything else?
Nope.
You can't ask me anymore.
Oh, God, he's fine. Let him go. Let him go.
No, he's okay, I think. You are too, right? No more.
Come on, come on.
Yes, that's a good question.
All right,
do.
then I'm going to close the public hearing. You can't open your mouth. One piece of candy, Scott?
No, I got a piece of gum going.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Scott, I'll get back to you on that
Thanks, Scott.
$5,000.
Thank you.
That's good.
Very good.
I appreciate
Yeah. Okay, meeting minutes. Everybody has a copy? While you're reading those, I'd just like to say that our member Stephen is in the hospital, and Steve is in the hospital at Brigham and Women's. So remember him in your thoughts.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to accept the meeting minutes of January 24th as presented.
And I'll second those. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Good night, Patrick.
Good night.
Thank you.
it. Maybe Catherine has one more, before you leave, you might have an answer to that question that we had about the additional money that was put into the island. Excuse me, Madam Chair, I could direct a question at another selectman that may have found something out this week. I think she's on to something.
I have no idea what you just asked me.
Oh,
I heard
okay.
island and
Something
money.
about the island, damn
I
it.
heard island and money.
Take a seat.
There's $500, right?
It was, $1,500 was asked for island
Islands
maintenance.
maintenance.
The
You know,
selectmen approved $1,500. The budget committee approved $2,000. I asked why.
I don't know why the budget committee approved $2,000. But
Anything that would have increased
our
that.
island maintenance is, you know,
Mow the lawn, right?
well, mowing the
Like
lawn
bulbs.
is within their budget, because that's what they do, like they mow
Like
one out
bulbs.
of
Trim
two.
trees and.
It's for the extras, you know, they had some repairs to make.
Was it trees?
Trees,
I think we
dimmer
had, I
switch.
think the trees were done through another line when we did the trees, it was arborist, but we do put monies in there in case, remember we had a hanger up there that was gonna fall, we had to get that down. We've had to repair the
Flagpole?
The
Was that part of the
benches.
flagpole thing?
John donated.
The
one.
time-
You don't donate all that stuff?
The time, yeah.
We
But
had
the-
to
we had the-
repair
the
some
timer for the lights.
vandalism that was done on the gazebo. We, I don't know if they did the repairs, there's a barbecue pit there that needed repairs. Most of the time, we split the repairs with Northfield, but sometimes they run across them, and they're repairs that can't wait, they're safety issues. You see a limb hanging up in a tree, it's gotta come down.
Put cameras in there.
It can't wait until we.
Get George
It's
Orwell.
take the time to go through the process, which can take up to 2 or 3 weeks. So there's things that they do to repair, so that's what it is, but I have no idea what the
did the
budget
15
committee
cover
increased it.
But
thanks,
we
thank
don't
you.
know, we don't know why we
I
did, but
don't recall being a part of that conversation.
Yeah.
I
I mean,
figure you guys know how much money you need to spend to maintain the island
Well,
based
and it's
on
a-
what you've spent
it's a
back.
guess, because you never know.
yeah.
Yeah.
You never know what, you know, who,
Okay.
what creatures
There's a
gonna
little
go over
cushion
there and
in
destroy
there.
certain things, and, we had some trouble with the electrical.
Yeah, we put
We
in
had to
a
have some work
timer.
done on that.
The
The
box
timer
or
was,
something.
the
yeah.
timer was vandalized.
Yeah.
I think that's one place you do need cameras for safety.
And we have talked about that. Cameras, if I remember from Tim, a lot of them require electricity. Well,
Well, the way you steal
there's
over
only a
there
few
too.
places, and I know from Riverfront Park, never mind, I'm not gonna say it on camera. I mean, we cambered that pretty well.
Mhm.
We followed the electricity and the cabling back to the receiver. Well, the same thing on the island, unless you just want to put up game cameras, but somebody that wants
That's
You have to
the way
put
to
up
steal,
a
don't steal
internet
those.
connection.
Dog poop police. That's basically what you, and maybe some drinking some beer at the gazebo. Occasionally you might have an idiot that rips down a shingle or the
Well, like
electric
we had the
box,
vandalism with the
but
timer.
I hate the idea of cameras. I always have. You know I have.
Well, yeah, you know, people go there to enjoy the concerts, so they really want, you know, everybody to know that you're being watched.
Big
Watch
brother.
everywhere.
I hate to be voting for a big brother
I agree
mentality.
with you, but they certainly.
But I understand it,
Everyone
God
wears
knows.
them apart.
We change it back to 15, or
Well, I was gonna say it. I was gonna suggest that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a dark figure anyway, even at 15,
Okay.
at 2,000, it's a dark figure.
All
You
right.
just don't know.
No, you don't.
All right, thank you,
And
Jen.
not to cut you short, but I make a motion to accept the meeting minutes of January 24th, 2018.
Second.
I thought we did that.
I thought we already
Did that.
voted on
We
We
it.
already did that, Wayne.
Did we?
Yeah.
Joe
Yeah,
and.
Oh, we'll get you back
I
on
would like to
task.
make a motion
All right, we are
to,
back on task now.
all right, we have one thing left to do, and that's to approve the total operating budget or not, or whatever. However, before that, I'd like to make a motion to reduce the that island line. What line is it? Oh,
The 1,500 one,
yeah,
under culture and recreation, 99-945.
you got it. Good.
I'd like to reduce that by $500.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Tim, what?
That's okay.
Another one?
I was just going to point out that it's probably because at the time the budget was done with the selectmen, not all the expenses had been recorded for that, for the island.
There'll be slush money.
Let's
On
just say no to slush.
expenditures.
All right. Which brings our total operating budget to $5,102,101. I'll make a motion to accept that.
Where is that, Jane?
Total operating budget.
May I ask?
Not,
No,
not
we-
under
no,
the
no,
warrant one,
no,
right? Okay,
No,
so
no,
this first
that's
one-
not correct. What's the correct figure? And 500 from, that's not it. Let me,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I'll get it. Just a minute, I got it.
5602, 601.
5602,
601.
601?
I believe so.
No. Not we're reducing it by
Oh,
five.
that is the final amount.
Yeah, 5602, 601.
Okay,
5602,
Yep.
601?
Yes.
Double checked it.
okay.
We're increasing it?
No,
No,
from 603 to 602 would be a decrease.
What does 602 here?
that's the selectmen's amount. Our amount's over there.
Oh, I'm over
okay?
here.
Yeah, we're over in this neighborhood.
Thanks, Joe.
So we're actually, came up with the same number.
Mm-mm.
No, we're $500 more
More,
than they.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Yes?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Okay, to get that one nay.
Yeah, who seconded that? Who seconded it?
Christine. Okay, warrant articles. Do you know when Joyce is gonna have those for us? She left before I was gonna ask her that, but she left, but she,
No idea.
okay. Because do you see any reason to meet next week if we don't have the warrant articles?
If we don't have the warrant articles, unless something extraordinary comes up, I shouldn't think so, right?
Right. Because our second public hearing is Valentine's Day.
How romantic, Jane.
John's
Let's
gonna-
go to the
And
budget.
you're
It's
stuck
a
with all of
softie.
us, you
It's a
know?
softie day.
We'll have our own Valentine's party.
Yeah, we'll have a Valentine's
Love
party.
it.
Yeah.
She wrote the little cards, like, you know,
Oh, yeah.
remember the little,
Yeah.
Glitter stuck on your pants.
little cards?
So we won't have a meeting on the 7th.
Next one's the
So our
14th.
next meeting will be the second hearing on the 14th. And we'll have to have the warrant articles by then,
Mhm.
because we have to
That's the hearing.
hear on those. Okay?
Done deal.
Do we need to come in before 7 then, if we're just getting warrant articles on the 14th?
Joyce will send them to us, to
Oh,
you,
okay.
I believe, and you will forward them to us, please.
Okay.
Do we want to have our recommendations prior to the hearing? Or do we want to make our recommendations after, like approve?
I thought we could make them after, because I was reading on it yesterday, we don't even have to approve it.
Yes, for our recommendation.
Yeah, but we don't really have to do it. I just,
It'd be good if we get some public input that
Yeah.
might sway us.
yeah,
Madam Chairwoman, do we have any other business?
not that I'm aware of.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Easy?
Aye.
Yeah.
Jim, could you?
It is.
We don't.